The last 10 minutes here, I'll blame on the cat. Everything else is on me. I have an interview I'm playing for you guys. I'm a little winded. Literally, I was just like Rocky. Just like Rocky, except he caught the chicken. I was chasing an 8-month-old cat around the studio, trying to get her the hell out of here because she likes biting wires. And if you guys remember, she literally pulled a wire and pulled me right off the show. Just boom, see you later. And there was no recovering. So I'm a little winded. That's what's going on there. But I did corral the cat, Rory, and banished her from the land. And I guess I forgot to close the gate, and she scurried on down here, and here we are. I capped that gate a while back, which is why we weren't having a problem. Take a minute. I think I need to read Inner Excellence, and that'll make me feel better. Welcome into the show, everybody. Our guest today is going to be Matt Lombardo, NFL writer Matt Lombardo. You may remember Matt from his stops at 97.5 The Fanatic. Fan-sided. He has done some fantastic work covering the NFL. Now has his own website. You guys can check him out at Between the Hash Marks. So we'll play that interview for you a little bit later today. Also, like myself, he is a Fox 29 contributor. So we share that title. And Matt will be joining us a little bit later in the show. We'll play that interview where he talks all things Eagles and Rams. I am not worried about this game. I know weather can be weird. It's one of those things where I'm going into a game feeling extremely confident, and I go, but anything can happen, right? I'm like, yeah, but it shouldn't. When I have those, when I talk to myself, which is crazy, I feel great. To cut right to the chase, and we'll hear from some other people on this as well, like Sean McVay and Darius Slay. We'll hear from them fellas about the weather and all that. Also, Jordan Mailata hates the weather. As an Australian, he doesn't like snow, apparently. But here is the weather officially official. Weather.com. Snow showers early will become steadier snow in the afternoon. Eagles play at 3, for those who don't remember. Temps nearly settling in the low to mid-30s. Winds 10 miles to 15 miles per hour. Chance of snow, 90%. Snow accumulating 3 to 5 inches. Oh, my goodness. The Rams just played in a game against the New York Jets at the Meadowlands. And that stadium it was 22 degrees. So this is going to be 10, 11 degrees warmer. You're welcome for doing the math. And Sean McVay said, and you'll hear him say in a minute, that it can't be as cold as it was in New York. You're right, but the conditions can be worse. Who does it favor? It obviously favors the team with the better ground attack. If I was to list off my 5 things, the number one thing that I have concern about in this game, and it goes away from the weather, and it goes away from turnovers. I'm always concerned about turnovers. And, now that I'm saying this, watch Jalen Hurts throw for 5 interceptions, God forbid. But the only thing I'm concerned about with the Rams is that they're going to run the football to make the Eagles run the football. Well, if it's really snowy and if it's really slippery, both teams are going to have to run the football. It comes down to me to Kyren Williams and how well he runs the football. To me, the number one factor for the high-flying, for whatever reason people go that way, high-flying LA Rams offense, the number one thing is how well Kyren Williams is able to run the football. Going into the game, and we'll discuss this with Matt Lombardo coming up in a little bit, going into the game, without any weather yet, I was just thinking, if I'm the Rams, how do I game plan against the Eagles? And I want to keep Saquon Barkley off the field. So I want to control the time of possession. I want to dominate the time of possession. And I want to make sure that when they get on the football field, they got to respond to whatever I just did offensively, and they got to respond rather quickly. So I'm going to control the clock. And only way I do that consistently is with Kyren Williams. The other way you do that is Puka Nacua out of the backfield, running the football like they like to do, putting him in motion, obviously, is the number one thing for receiving, but also putting him in motion to kind of disguise that little jet sweep they like to do, that little swing passes they like to do to Puka Nacua, all those things, a little short game where the conversation always gets had about short passing, screens, swing passes, whatever it might be, passes into the flat. Those are all extensions of the run game, as we used to always hear from Andy Reid time and time again. Oh, those passes, they're like runs. Yeah, except they're not. But in a game like this, where you might want to try to mix it up a little bit with how much you might be running the football, That's something that I am absolutely concerned about. Kyron Williams controlling the clock. Puka Nacua getting the ball out of the backfield even more. I'm not just saying just running out of the backfield, but those short passes and then making guys miss. But if I'm the Rams, my strategy is keep Saquon off the field, keep the offense off the field, try to take advantage as much as possible as inexperienced linebackers, whether it's Oren Burks, who is a veteran in the NFL, or it's Jeremiah Trotter Jr., taking advantage of the inexperience that those players have playing with Zach Bond. Maybe you could capitalize on some miscommunication, and we all know how important communication is in the Vic Fangio defense, especially when you drop it back into the zone so often and you're passing guys off. Even Vic Fangio throughout the year has talked about how that's been difficult for some other players to pick up. When it comes to this offense, or when it comes to this defense, that's something they're going to have to be aware of. And Sean McVay is going to try to spin them like a top throughout this game. But the only way he's going to do that is if he keeps his offense on the football field. Darius Slay, love what I heard from Darius Slay this week yesterday about how the weather shouldn't be a factor. He doesn't factor in weather. He doesn't believe in a weather advantage. I think his point of view is, well, both teams are playing in this, so that's that. But it does harken back to his time with Matthew Stafford in Detroit and also playing in a game here in Philadelphia where it snowed considerably. It's stupid of me, but I always forget how old Darius Slay is. And I was like, wait, is he old enough to have played in that game? Is he old enough to have played in the Snow Globe game? And I'm like, holy Stromboli. He absolutely is. He absolutely is old enough to play in that Snow Globe game. And that is hilarious. And he talks about LaShawn McCoy and Deshaun Jackson firing up highlights from that game and saying how he wishes they wouldn't do it, but they did it. I don't think there's any question that weather's going to play into how this game plays out. Overall, I think you have a sloppy game, but I think it's one that the Eagles come out on top. And I've said that pretty much throughout the entire week, that the Eagles come out on top. I'll give you my prediction a little bit later, but here's the way it breaks down for me. The LA Rams are not a team that I fear. The Eagles gave them, and their starters, mind you, because they didn't play their starters in the last game of the season. The LA Rams' last loss with their starters came against the Philadelphia Eagles in Week 12. They didn't rattle off 5 straight wins. I think the Eagles gave them their last loss, and then I think the Eagles are going to give them their last loss of the season. Yeah. Cooper Kupp has not been the guy that he has been in the past. Got injuries. I'm not saying he's done or his career's over or anything like that. Just saying if you're worried about him in this game, I am not worried about him in this game. When you talk about a guy who is used to 8, 9, 10, 11, 15 targets, only getting 4 in the last 4 or 5 games, that's not a big part of your offense. Puka Nacua is the guy you got to shut down, and thank goodness gracious, the Eagles have Darius Slay, Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean. They got those guys. They also have Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who's been a ball hawk this year. We haven't made enough about 6 interceptions from Chauncey Gardner-Johnson this year. The year that he went, the Eagles went to the Super Bowl with him as a safety, he had 6 interceptions, and that actually led the league. And he missed, a month and a half? A month? But yeah, 6 interceptions, a pretty good number. When Chauncey Gardner-Johnson gets 6 interceptions for the Eagles, they go to the Super Bowl. So if you're looking to stop really one guy, one deep threat, one consistent deep threat, this is the defense to have. If you're looking to not have to take a guy out of coverage to blitz, which thank goodness gracious, Vic Fangio has mastered throughout this season, this is kind of the offense, or excuse me, this is kind of the defensive line that you want to have. You look at last week's success of the Rams against the Vikings. Their defensive line was the star of the show. Their passing defense wasn't so great, but when it came to just getting after Matthew Stafford, or when it came to getting after Sam Darnold, it just came down to the defensive line getting home, even having a defensive touchdown. The Eagles' defensive line can have very similar success. And Matthew Stafford gets rid of the football. He's not brought down a lot. You're talking about 6 sacks in his last 4 games. This might be that. This might be that game where that changes, especially when you have someone in the middle of the defensive line pushing like Jalen Carter. So I don't even look like it's the combination of great defensive back play, great cornerback play, great nickel play, and a great defensive line. Yeah, I'm feeling kind of good about that. When it comes to the Rams passing defense, now, again, snow, weather permitting, all that and the other. I've been talking about things that you don't fear. When you look at this Eagles passing attack, I know throughout the season, this has been something that has almost been scoffed at because of its lack of use. We've used the word atrophy a lot on the show because you've been having so much fun and success with Saquon Barkley. Have you looked at it enough to the point where, oh my goodness gracious, look at this Eagles team. Oh, are they going to be able to pull? Are they going to be able to pull out a pass here and there? It's been a concern. If you have A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, a healthy Dallas Goedert who was out with missed practice yesterday with an illness, I assume he'll be ready to go come Sunday. These are all fantastic weapons that the Rams defense is not to stop. When I look, other than the any given Sunday thing, every time I've thought about this game throughout the week, and even after the Vikings game here, their wild card game in Arizona, even after watching that game, I was thinking, I was like, okay, well, I didn't want the Vikings because you could always run it up with Justin Edwards. You might get into a shootout. And then I thought for a second here, hold on a second. You got the LA Rams now coming to town with Matthew Stafford, with these offensive weapons and Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua and Tyler Higbee, if he can go up and play, who they didn't have, by the way, in the first meeting against the Eagles earlier in the season. And the Eagles, speaking of controlling the clock, they can control the clock. Matthew Stafford can certainly run a 2-minute offense, though. And I was like, you have this explosive Rams offense, and then you come to find out they're not that explosive. You're talking about 21 or fewer offensive points scored in 4 or 5 of their last games. That's not very impressive. They had that shootout against the Bills. That was an insane game. And then when you watch and look at how they played against other teams towards the end of the season, you're just like, this isn't that impressive. Yes, they've won, but it's not in an impressive fashion. Get into that more in a second. But when I look at this game, I look at just every single box. I look at an Eagles advantage. I mean, you're talking about defensively, it's the 20th worst, I should say, pass defense that the Rams have. 22nd worst run defense that the Rams have. And you're going up against top 10 in run defense, number 1 in pass defense. Rams are going up against a team number 2 in rushing yards. Oh, that's right, rushing yards per game, excuse me. And then a team that, unfortunately, with the Eagles, the passing yards offensively haven't been there this season, and that's a story that's been well covered. Turnover battle, Eagles are plus 11 to the Rams plus 6. Points allowed per game, Eagles are second best in the NFL, 17.8. Points scored per game, Eagles score about a touchdown more than the Rams throughout the season. Like, every advantage I look at here belongs to the Philadelphia Eagles. Okay, passing game, all right, you got me. Go figure. Passing game is done well. They do run the football well, and for a 1,300-yard rusher, they're pretty good there. But they're not Saquon Barkley in this Eagles offensive line. So I look at this game, and I know weather's going to be a factor. I'll let you hear what the guys are saying about the weather in a second. But overall, in what could be a very sloppy game, I'm in the realm of a 31-24 Eagles victory. That's the way I see this one breaking down. When it comes to the weather factor, I'll let you hear from Sean McVay and what he had to say. We'll start with Sean McVay on the weather in South Philly.
I think the biggest thing is just being mindful of if the surface is affected, that our cleats aren't an issue. That's a big part of it. Brennan Berger does a great job with that, Lindsey. And, I think, Matthew's had experience handling that ball. I know this. If it does snow, if it does rain, we got to be mindful of what we need to do to adjust and adapt. But there's no way it can be as cold as it was at the Jets game.
8-mile-per-hour winds in the Meadowlands there a couple of weeks back when they played the Jets and won. 22 degrees in North Jersey for that game. As for how the Eagles are feeling about the weather, Darius Slay did not hold back.
Well, it's not really too much of like a advantage. Like, we professionals, so it's like not too much advantage. Definitely. shoot, I play with staff, so we was in Detroit outside all the time. And that shit cold too. So it ain't, you know, so it's not, I don't see it as nothing as advantage. It's an element. And, you know, we just got to go out here and just, you know, go hard. So, yeah, I don't believe in that kind of like weather advantage. Not too much, you know, unless it's just snowing. And then, like, they don't got they just never see snow, like, as in the whole field covered up, wet balls. And
it has to be hard, though. It's slick out there for you to cut and move and do.
Yeah. That's what I'm here to say, y'all, right now. So tell D-Jack stop gassing up the 2013 game, because it was slicked out there, man. It was hard to tackle him out there, man. You know what I'm saying? He up here getting all freaking dicky on us and jumping over us and stuff. You know how hard it was to tackle the DJ? I mean, them boys in that snow, it's hard. Like slushy out there.
That might be my favorite Darius Slay clip we've ever played, and we've played a few of them on the show. So wet balls, and you know what? All right, cool. Man doesn't care. Man doesn't care. I always forget how old he is that he played in that game. That's insane to me. But he's played in that game. There's no way it's not a factor, especially if 3 to 5 inches in the afternoon. Good times. Now, the biggest thing is that Saquon Barkley, I know, and this is what a lot of people talk about. Saquon Barkley breaking out as much as he did in the previous matchup. Likely not going to happen. And I saw these numbers yesterday that I'd like to share with you. I believe this is career high in a season. Jeez. Career high. When a player has established a career high in a matchup against a team they face in the playoffs. Barry Sanders against Tampa Bay, 214 yards in 1997. Second time they played him in the playoffs, he only had 65 yards. That's Barry Sanders. 214 yards to 65 yards. Marshall Faulk, 220 yards against the Saints, 24 yards in the playoffs in 2000. No Sean Moreno. How about that, huh? 224 yards against the New England Patriots, held to 59 yards in the postseason matchup. Saquon Barkley against the LA Rams, 255 yards. And to hell with it, he still gets 200 yards in this game against the LA Rams. I don't know. I thought that was an interesting thing. It popped up. I think CBS Sports had that. I found it to be very interesting. So there you go. Barry Sanders, Marshall Faulk, no Sean Marino. Saquon Barkley going to have more success? Maybe. As far as that first game, Sean McVay was asked about that yesterday. And, you know, if you're a head coach of a football team, this is the exact message you want to give after getting pummeled earlier in the year in week 12 and then facing that same team and that same running back in the second round of the playoffs.
Here's what I would say. I think humbling experiences with the right people can be great learning ops, great growth opportunities. I think there's a ton of respect that our guys have where you think you know what it's like, and then when he gets to the second and third levels and the way that their offensive line is able to come off and get removal on some of their double teams, you have a real appreciation for the type of strain and finish that it's going to take to play at the level that we're capable of and what's going to be necessary if we expect to be able to advance. So I think it's definitely helpful. I think both teams, and I think they've continued to improve since then. I think there's been a lot of learning, a lot of growth from us since then, but ultimately everything that occurred in that game, it's about how we play in this 3-hour window. But I absolutely think there's appreciation and understanding of what's going to be required for us to try to slow down what's a great offense.
Yeah, there you go. Just the exact message you want to give out. The exact message you want to give out. I give him credit. His team's going to lose. His team's going to lose. Hey, speaking of coaches real quick, before I play this interview and then earlier hit today on Fox. But hey, we're going to get to the 40-minute mark, so that's fun. It's officially official. The Dallas Cowboys have requested permission to speak to Kellen Moore. I saw Barstool even tweeted out there, like, how is this even a thing? How is this even a thing where you could interview coaches that are currently getting ready for postseason? Today, Kellen Moore is supposed to get interviewed. I believe that was the request, at least, that he's supposed to get interviewed today. How in the hell's bells is this all right? Like, I won't be distracted because, I'm concentrated on the Rams. No, you're not. I know what you're doing Friday, you old sandbagging SOB. I know what you're doing. You're interviewing for your dream job of being a head coach. It might not be your dream job to be a head coach of the Dallas Cowboys, but still, your dream of being, you're not going to be distracted. I'm not going to be distracted. I'm focused on the Rams. That's what they always say. I'm focused on whoever the opponent. I'm focused on not distracted. Yeah, but what's just, I don't believe you. I don't believe you at all. With that being said, I can't imagine it's just too invasive of an interview when you've worked with the guy for over 5 years in the defensive coordinator position. But the NFL's weird, and this is what it is. Hey, let me tell you about the Game Time app. Game Time, I hate it. I absolutely hate it, but it was inevitable. If you didn't see this coming, then you just weren't paying attention. I hate that it's happening. I didn't want to wish it into existence, but I think it was going to happen anyway. Overall, if I had to sum up my feelings in one word, it would be, or sound. Ugh. That's how I feel about Kellen Moore interviewing with the Cowboys. Also, I hope he knows the scoreboard doesn't matter.
Take away the scoreboard.
Thank you. Let me tell you about the Game Time app. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use promo code FARZY, get $20 off your first purchase on the Game Time app. Want to go to the game, the concert, the comedy show? Game Time app is where it's at. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use promo code FARZY, get $20 off your first purchase. How about PHL Sports Nation, Philadelphia Sports Nation, enhancing your Philadelphia sports fan experience across all social media and blogs. That's phlsportsnation.com. Let's get into the chat check. Nino Brown, good morning, Farzy. Can the Eagles block Kellen? No, they can't, unfortunately. Tate Jeffries, good morning. Wine Niners Wine, what's going on? Dev must be getting interviewed by the Cowboys. That's why he's late. Thank you. I say the real host's awake early. There you go. See the there. Good Farzy, we did chit-chatting, joking. I love it. I absolutely love it. T-Bro, what's going on? Go Birds. Sean Kilrain, hello. Good morning. M. Reyes, hello. Sean Kilrain, the Eagles' second team since the 1970 merger in the NFL. Rushing title winner and number one total defense. The only other team to do that. 92 Cowboys. How about that? Sean Kilray, 28-20. Love it. Reyes, 52-3. April. What's going on? Sean Gillespie. Hello. Appreciate it. Mr. Salmon. Don't trust them stinking Cowboys. Neither do I. Mr. Salmon. I'm going to enjoy the football game and root for my favorite team. Fight, fight, fight. Go Eagles. There you go. I love it. Chad Crawford. Hello. All right. Without further ado, let's get to my man, Matt Lombardo. You guys should check him out and follow him on all social media platforms. See if this gets going here. Right now, the Raw Orthopedic. Hey, there we go. All right. Go Birds. Have a wonderful weekend. I'll catch you guys, Sunday on Seth Joyner Show YouTube channel. Catch you guys there. Bye. This right now, the Raw Orthopedics guest line, NFL writer, friend of mine, first time hit on the show, Matt Lombardo joins us. Matt, how are you, my friend?
Mark, great to be here. And what a time to make the debut. We got a big game, Eagles-Rams, and a big weekend that's going to be capped by what I think could be the game of the year, Bills-Ravens. So you look at this weekend, I love the divisional playoffs. You get the 4 games, 2 on Saturday, 2 on Sunday. I can't wait.
Yeah, and make sure you guys are following Matt for all your NFL needs. Of course, you can follow him on Threads. Right there, Matt Lombardo, NFL. Just follow him right there on Threads. And make sure you guys are also following him on Between the Hash Marks as well. Well, where right now, not only do you have great Eagle stuff, but you also have a divisional matchup each game, the special divisional matchup for each game. Is that what you got going on right now on Between the Hash Marks?
Yeah, right now we have the one key matchup that's going to decide each divisional matchup game going into the weekend. Had a lot of fun diving into some of the metrics for each team, the key matchups, the player on player, the quarterback on defensive coordinator. A lot of chess matches to look forward to this weekend that I can't wait to see unfold.
All right, I've been dying to ask you this question because I've heard it so much from the Eagles locker room, and the Rams are a totally different team. Like the way they talk about them, it's like they've changed uniforms. They're a totally different team than the team that the Eagles faced in Week 12. How, in your eyes, have the LA Rams changed since the Eagles played them in Week 12?
Yeah, Mark, I think it comes down to the defense has really started to find its teeth out there, because you look at the first time these teams played, Saquon Barkley runs roughshod, a career-high 255 yards, has the 2 touchdowns of over 65 yards. They were really the deciding factor in that game. But you look at what they were able to do against the Minnesota Vikings on Monday night, just relentless pressure on Sam Darnold. And I know that he welcomed some of that with how long he held onto the football in the pocket. But when you're getting sacked 9 times and the defense is producing something like 11 and a half hurries, you're under that kind of duress. There's not a whole lot that you can do, even though you do have, Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson at receiver there. I think when you look at what makes the Rams different is you have Puka Nacua hitting his stride on offense, and you have a defense that's found its footing with a lot of playmakers that are homegrown on all three levels of that defense playing some of their best football of the season.
It's so crazy to talk defense about the Rams, strictly because Sean McVay always gets talked about as this offensive mastermind, but you're talking about what, 4 games, 5 games now, you're talking about his offense not scoring more than 21 points. Where's that offense? Where's that mastermind Sean McVay at? Is he still in there somewhere, Matt?
Yeah, I think that, you started to see it a little bit on Monday night. I mean, that first drive, that methodical march down the field with Matthew Stafford and Kyron Williams doing his thing down near the goal line in the red zone. Yeah, I think that there's always that bag of tricks that you pull out this time of year. But, Nacua only playing 10 games, I think that sort of limited what they were able to do because he's their most versatile and dynamic weapon, both after the catch, in the open field, making guys miss. Only played in 10 games this year, Mark, but 5 of them over 100 receiving yards. So he's one of those matchup nightmares. And you start talking about key matchups. Vic Fangio in that secondary, which has punched above their weight the entire year with, Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean and Darius Slay really playing well. And of course, you look at CJGJ having the game of his season last week in a lot of respects against Jordan Love and the Packers. I think that's one of the areas that's going to decide this game is the Eagles secondary being able to limit Puka Nacua.
All right. Now, you mentioned Kyron Williams there. If I'm Sean McVay, I mean, people would do this against the Eagles, and so I expect other people to do it against, or expect them to do it against the Eagles as well. But when it comes to Kyron Williams, if I'm Sean McVay, I don't want Saquon on the field. And the way you can limit that, even though he could still be a home run hitter, and as we learned in this Rams game, 2 huge runs that were all of a sudden instant offense and instant points for the Eagles, I want to keep him off the field. So do you think Kyron Williams comes into play a little bit more when we're talking about practically a 1,300-yard rusher during the regular season? Do you see him being a focal point for McVay's offense in this upcoming matchup?
Yeah, 14 touchdowns too. So that's nothing to shake a stick at when you're averaging, 4.1 yards per carry and 14 scores. Yeah, I think that it's all about ball control. And the one thing about the Rams, we touched on the defense at the jump here, they've gotten a lot better against the run. That might be the biggest difference overall because when you look at teams that give up explosive runs of 10 yards or more, going all the way back to week 7, which includes Saquon Barkley running wild, they're the 5th best defense in terms of not giving up those explosive runs. So if they're able to tighten that up a little bit and keep Saquon Barkley bottled up, I wrote about this in the column this week. If Saquon Barkley goes off and he has a similar game like that, of course the Eagles are going to win this game, right? And it's going to be rather handedly. But if they make Jalen Hurts, his second game back from the concussion, beat them, it could turn into a little bit of a rock fight here. And I think one of the ways you do that is controlling the tempo, getting a big lead early, like the Eagles jumped out on the Packers last week. If you flip that script, Mark, and it's the Packers that take that 7-0 lead, the way the Eagles offense played in that game, I'm not so sure they come back, and I don't know that they'd be able to come back against the Rams if they go up 7-0 or 10-0 early, and then you can pound the rock with Kyron.
Matt, I'm so glad you said that because that helps me think that I am actually not that crazy. One of the things I don't want to say fearing, but respecting, I was respecting going into the Packers game is how great Matt LaFleur game planned for the Cowboys the previous season when they were 7.5 point underdogs going into Dallas. Yeah. You force that fumble in the opening kickoff, all of a sudden a wrench gets thrown into all your planning. So that kind of, took that out of the equation for Matt LaFleur. So obviously you don't want the same thing to happen to the Eagles in any game or any team a fan would be rooting for. But you mentioned Jalen Hurts. You mentioned the second game back from the concussion. Let's start with last week against the Packers. What did you take away from the 6 of 6 to start the game, the 0 for 7 in the middle of the game, and then the 7 for 8 to end the game? What did you make of the Eagles' passing game and Jalen Hurts in general in the wild card round of the postseason?
Yeah, I wrote this on Monday morning that if that's the Eagles defense that shows up, if you get that defense against the Rams and you go into Detroit or Washington comes here, whatever that plays out, if that's the defense you get, the Eagles are going to be partying with the Lombardi at Cafe Du Monde over coffee and beignets on Monday morning, right? That defense is good enough to carry you. But they're going to need some help from the offense, right? And I think that, it was a lot to ask of Jalen Hurts against that particular defense. So I think the Packers were criminally underrated defensively when you look at guys like Edrin Cooper and Xavier McKinney and some of the playmakers they have on defense. It was a lot to ask of him 3 or 4 practices back after sitting for 3 weeks because of the concussion to be all that effective. I don't know that offense is good enough to get you, through the next 2 rounds into a Super Bowl. I don't know that offense is good enough to beat Patrick Mahomes at his best, or Josh Allen, or beat the Baltimore Ravens again as they did down in Baltimore earlier this year. But this is the telling matchup for me, because I think that the Eagles' offensive line is good enough to give him the time that he had against the Packers. Well, I think we're a better pass rush overall than the Rams are. It's another week of the timing getting back with A.J. Brown, with Devonta Smith, getting into that rhythm a little bit. They need Jalen Hurts to be Jalen Hurts, right? And I think that when people talk about concussions, there's still this notion of, oh, it's not that bad. It's a concussion. He'll be back in a week or 2. Look at Tua Tagovailoa. Look what the injuries and the compounding concussions have done to him. Jalen Hurts coming out of the concussion protocol, you have to relearn your timing. You have to get used to, you might be feeling a little bit more tired and sluggish throughout the course of a game. I think he worked through a lot of that last week, and just being a week removed from the injury, I think what you saw at the end of that game is what's going to carry into the start of this game against the Rams.
One of the big things that gets brought up with Jalen Hurts is, sooner or later, he's going to have to win a game for the Eagles. And so in this idea, in this thought process, the defense isn't playing well, let's just say. Saquon Barkley isn't getting his, let's just say. So it's all going to come down to Jalen Hurts. In that moment where maybe it's the Rams that take away all those things and it's Jalen's got to step up, maybe it's the Lions, maybe it's the Commanders, maybe it's the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. How confident are you, if at all, to be fair, how confident are you that Jalen Hurts can win that game if it comes down to his performance?
Does he have A.J. Brown on the field?
Yeah, he still has A.J. Brown. He still has Devontae Smith.
Okay.
And he's got that Dallas Goedert fella and this offensive line as well.
If A.J. Brown is healthy and if he's effective, I think Jalen Hurts is going to be fine. You look at the numbers this year, they're 10-0 when Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown are both healthy and both starting. And, I've written this a couple times throughout the course of the year. As much as we talk about Saquon Barkley being in the MVP conversation, as much as we talk about him being the great erasure of adversity as the focal point of the offense, the most important player on that Eagles offense might be A.J. Brown. He's a matchup nightmare. He creates so much space for Goddard underneath, creates so much space when the secondary has to respect the deep ball ability. And the timing that he has on with Jalen Hurts, it's second to none of any of the pass catchers in that offense. So as long as A.J. Brown is A.J. Brown, I think Jalen Hurts has that home run threat and that security blanket wrapped up into one, and I think he'd be fine.
Do you find it interesting at all that, look, I don't want to just put it on fans, but people in general, they're having the conversation that we were having 3 years ago. Is Jalen Hurts the guy? And we're talking about a Super Bowl appearance, talking about Pro Bowl appearances, we're talking about MVP consideration in 2.5 seasons, because up until week 11, I think it was last year, he was in the MVP conversation. Do you find it interesting that people are now focusing on him more than they have really in 3 years, saying whether or not he's the guy?
I do a little bit, because you look at the numbers and, close to 3,000 yards, 18 touchdowns, and just 3 picks. You're not creating a lot of turnovers. You're not even needing to ask Jalen Hurts to be Patrick Mahomes or be Lamar Jackson or be Josh Allen, because you have Saquon Barkley. And he's the engine that makes that offense go. And when Saquon Barkley is effective, you need to make 10 or 12 really good throws throughout the course of a game over the top, and you're going to be fine, because you have that home run threat that's going to take care of a lot of the issues if the offense goes into a little bit of a lull, and probably going to be the tone setter. And I don't really know where this criticism of Jalen Hurts comes from, because he's made a couple of gutty runs for first down on third down. It's 1st and 9 every time, because he's so uniquely gifted at the tush push, even though I think that what the Ravens have started doing with Mark Andrews is the tight end push. I honestly think that might be a little bit more innovative than the tush push the way the Eagles do it, because you have a tight end who's bigger, more physical, when you're not subjecting your quarterback to that hit. But, I just think that you can do so much with Jalen Hurts because of what he does so well. And you saw them last week try to, innovate off of the tush push with the deep ball down the field. You start doing things like that, there aren't many quarterbacks within this system that could do the things that Jalen Hurts does, in my opinion.
I'm with you. I'm with you 100%. When it comes to this offense in general, is there anything you want to see from Kellen Moore? I've been begging and I'm never going to get it because it's not Kellen Moore, but like a stretch play. I feel like a stretch play would kill with Saquon Barkley in the backfield, run that kind of play action. Do you feel like there is something Kellen Moore is missing? Is there anything you'd like to see more from this offense?
Maybe involving the tight end a little bit more and kind of going to Dallas Goedert and some of the other tight ends in that room a little bit more than they do in a way that the Bills have utilized Dawson Knox and their tight ends up there as legitimate, wide receiver-esque pass catchers. But listen, when the opportunities are there, they've taken deep shots downfield with A.J. Brown. Those have happened throughout the course of the year. Devonta Smith, they've taken, some big shots. I'd like to see more of Jahan Dotson involved because I think that when you have three wide receivers, not just Craig Calcaterra or Dallas Goedert in that role, but three field-stretching wide receivers, you can dictate to the defense a little bit more than they are. But I don't have a whole lot of complaints about that offense other than you need to see them in the playoffs put together 4 consistent quarters because there are going to be teams with more experienced quarterbacks like a Matthew Stafford, like a Jared Goff, that can take advantage of those lulls in a way that Jordan Love was not able to last week in the wild card round.
On the defensive side of things, the Eagles are going into this game without Nakobe Dean. He's done. There's been some high praise from Vic Fangio in the direction of Jeremiah Trotter Jr., saying, his future might be right now in this playoff matchup against the Reds. It might have to be. What would you do if you're standing next to Vic Fangio and he says to you, hey, Matt Lombardo, who should I have here playing next to the majority of the snaps next to Zach Bond? Are you going Oren Burks or are you going Jeremiah Trotter Jr.?
In this spot, I think it's a 50-50 split. I mean, Burks has a little bit more experience, not necessarily in these big moments, but he has more snaps under his belt. I think that he's a guy that's a real thumper, good instincts. But you got to work Jeremiah Trotter Jr. in, A, to get that experience, and B, because I think that he's a guy that has all the physical traits that you look for. But if anything else, Mark, this comes down to Zach Bond needing to continue to be the guy. And I don't think I thought that it was a really good signing because you talk to people around the league going into last free agency. Hey, look out for Zach Bond. This kid doesn't play enough snaps in New Orleans to show what he can do. I thought it was a good signing. I didn't know and didn't expect it to be potential first-team all-pro caliber linebacker play, and that's what you're getting. So even though you lose Nakobe Dean, I think it just elevates the importance of Zach Bond keeping this rolling.
Matt, you and I have spent our time in sports talk radio. I always, if a caller told me this, would I believe it? Absolutely not. If he told me Zach Bond was going to come to Philadelphia and be an all-pro, I'd be like, that's the homerest thing I've ever heard.
Make a movie about it, Invincible Part 2, right?
Exactly. The big not so easy, being that he came from the Saints. When it comes to there you go. Let's start writing. When it comes to the matchup overall, do you like the Eagles here? Where are you at in terms of how good this Eagles team is, and do they at least get past the Rams?
Yeah, I'm actually more confident about this matchup than I was against the Packers. I thought Green Bay had a real chance to come in and beat them because of what they've been doing on defense down the stretch, because of Jordan Love, because of Josh Jacobs' ability to do a lot of the things you're talking about the Rams wanting to do with Kyren Williams. I thought it was going to be a lot tougher for the Eagles to get past that matchup. Bringing this team. Look, I don't want to belittle what's going on with the wildfires in California into an element of what's going to affect the matchup here. But it's one thing to play on that sort of emotion Monday night in a playoff game, rallying as a team in Arizona. But then to fly cross country again with the backdrop of the city is still on fire, the community is still hurting. Who knows what kind of distractions were there for the prep this week going into this game. It's a lot to dial that back up. And on top of that, Matthew Stafford is a great quarterback, but we've seen Vic Fangio's defense force them into mistakes, force quarterbacks into mistakes throughout the course of the year. I think that happens again. Key interception here or there. I just think that maybe you can play on emotion and rallying and team chemistry for a week. I don't know that you can dial that back up 2 weeks in a row, this time on the road.
All right, so I'll read between the lines. You like the Eagles here?
I do. Yeah, I think that. I don't think it's a blowout. I mean, I think it's a touchdown win for the Eagles, maybe 7 to 10 points.
All right. So I'm in that same realm as you. When it comes to Kellen Moore, there's been interest from the Saints, and now most recently there's been interest from the Dallas Cowboys, which I think surprises nobody considering his 5 years there as an offensive coordinator, as backup quarterback as well. Some other backup quarterback there as well in Dallas. Does Kellen Moore get the Dallas job?
I think he's got to be the leader in the clubhouse, right? For all the bluster that Deion Sanders is putting out there about talking to Jerry Jones and being in the mix and all that, Kellen Moore feels like the golden child in Dallas to Jerry Jones, which is fascinating in a lot of ways because you think about Dak Prescott, he had a better year the year after Kellen Moore was in Los Angeles as the offensive coordinator for the Chargers and for Justin Herbert. So I don't know that that's a great mix there, but I think the longstanding ties of playing in the organization, coaching on the coaching staff, Jerry Jones's affinity for Kellen Moore, he's got to be the leader in the clubhouse at this point, in my opinion. I think that's where he ultimately winds up.
Where does that leave the Eagles? Because it'll be yet another offensive coordinator calling plays with Jalen Hurts. Does Nick Sirianni ever retake over the responsibility of calling plays? Where does it leave the Eagles if another offensive coordinator is out the door?
Yeah, I think it just comes down to looking around the league and looking at quarterback coaches and offensive coordinators who might have been, blown out with the previous coaching staff. I got to admit, I haven't really dived into the hot upcoming coordinators to be. But, it's going to come down again. We talk about Jalen Hurts a lot and everything that he matters to this team and to their trajectory. You got to get an offensive coordinator who speaks Jalen Hurts' language because it seemed to work with Kellen Moore throughout the course of this year. It did not work with Brian Johnson in epic fashion, last year when he was brought in. So I think it just comes down to finding someone who can speak Hurts' language, who Hurts is comfortable in his scheme. And if you have to even involve him in the conversations and in the interviews for everything you have invested in Hurts from a contract standpoint, what he matters to your offense, bring him into the room, bring him into those interviews.
Mm-hmm. When it comes to the offensive coordinator, there's one thing that kind of terrifies me here. I felt the Eagles with Brian Johnson got very cocky. I felt like they looked at Jalen Hurts as an MVP. They looked at their offensive line, like any running back can run behind it. I think they looked at their offense, and with Devontae Smith as well, Dallas got it. Like, it's a stacked offense. I think they looked at it and said, anybody can call plays and we'll have success with this. So I don't want them to default to that again after Kellen Moore. Does that creep into your mind at all with who the next person could be?
Yeah, I almost think that they tried to almost change things too much in 1 year, even though Brian Johnson was already on the staff. It just did not look like the same offense the year they went to the Super Bowl and what you've seen with Kellen Moore coming in. If you want to create continuity, promote the quarterback coach into the offensive coordinator who's been on the staff. I know it's a similar route to what you did with Brian Johnson, but if it's working, why fix it? And that might have even been Brian Johnson trying to get his fingerprints on the system, on the scheme, to think that if he has a great year with Jalen Hurts, if they can do it his way, that's going to propel him into the head coaching conversation, that next level up like you're having with Kellen Moore right now. To me, it's about either continuity in what you're doing or finding somebody that does all of the things that Jalen Hurts does the best and is most comfortable doing.
Ladies and gentlemen, his name is Matt Lombardo. You got to be following him on Threads, Matt Lombardo, NFL on Threads. Also, make sure you guys do yourself a favor, subscribe to Between the Hash Marks, insider information there with the NFL. I know you got your sources all over the place, Matt. And right now, you guys, if you want to do some reading on the divisional matchups going on, Matt's picked out a key matchup in each divisional game that will help that team one way or another. Matt, always great catching up with you, man. Thanks so much.
Mark, thanks for having me. Really enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Matt Lombardo joining us here on the Rothman Orthopedics guest line.